I think most of you would have seen the movie called as Geostorm, which tried to go forward in terms of explaining the impact. When I use this word called as investigative, this is more about understanding, and that is possible. Why? Because when you go in for this kind of a technology called as the geographical information, they really put us on a depressive mode altogether. But then nature has its own call. Good morning and welcome to the session 6 of Unit 3, and we were speaking about the Indigenous knowledge and appropriate technology uses. So in this session, we are going to talk about the most appropriate technology that is being used today in terms of detecting and helping out in disaster management. So moving forward, let's try to understand this 3 important technology, which is now becoming a very, very important factor for growth, for controlling and for monitoring the disaster management. The first one is called as remote sensing, followed by the geographical information system and the global positioning system. Now all these 3 looks very, very fancy in terms of their names. Probably they might look on a high-end technology altogether, but then their applications are also so complex in terms of understanding the entire dynamics of disaster management. So just let's go forward and start understanding each and every technology that actually helps in monitoring and controlling the disaster management. Starting with the remote sensing. Now, if you have a power, let's say for example, that you can be in one place and you can sense whatever is happening around the globe, won't you not be surprised? Would you not be taken away, carried away, or whatever is the factor? Definitely yes, that's the same power that man started visualizing himself in terms of technology. Being in one place, you will be able to go around the world. You will be able to sense each and every changes that is happening around you. So remote sensing is going to be the most forward technology that I can talk about in terms of controlling the disaster management. Just look at the technique that is being used. It's an investigative technique that uses a recording instrument or a device to acquire information on a distant object or a phenomenon which is not physical or close contact. So what is really surprising for me is that, could I use this technology and start finding out what is happening in Mars? The answer is yes. So what man has invented for himself is something incredible. He is able to locate himself out of this globe. He is able to locate himself to far distant remote places, able to understand what is happening, and he's able to sense altogether. Now this is what I would call as an extension of the 6th sense altogether. Why? Because in remote sensing, what we are trying to use is that we are using a device which is investigative in nature. When I use this word called as investigative, this is more about understanding the purpose, understanding how the system moves altogether. Now, for example, let me tell you, when I talk about this investigative process, whenever we are going to learn about something, the most important or the interesting factor is that you need to start understanding the factors from the close study altogether, rather than just looking at it as a picture, as a systemology altogether. So what happens here is that you are able to go further, understand what is happening in detail. That's where the remote sensing technology really makes it interesting. So let's say that using the remote sensing, you are able to study about an earthquake or about a UFO, an unidentified flying object. Or you are going to study about some scientific method, or about a rock, about a crystalline, about a typhoon, about whichever process that is not easily locatable, that's not physically near you, you would like to learn more. So that's where remote sensing becomes a tool or becomes a system through which you will be able to understand the entire working methodology. Secondly, this technique is used for accumulating important information about environment. The environment in which we live is more interesting. It's really fascinating altogether. Why? Because every day when we walk through this environment, when we go through the surroundings, what really fascinates us is that how is the environment changing every day, or are we changing according to the environment? So the change factor is something that keeps haunting the memory of the human beings. So every time we want to know more about the environment, we want to know that how the leaves change their color, how the seasons come into picture, how does the climate change, what is the reason for the sun to rise early and what is the reason for the sun to set early. There are millions of questions like this which you would like to ask to yourself, to this world, to this environment, to the system. But then for everything you don't get an answer instantly on a rapid basis. But then what you try to do is that you go further, you start exploring yourself, you start putting your mind into an innovative process where you want to get answer to every single question possible. And the answer to that is the remote sensing. This technique is used to find out data, accumulate that data into the system so that anytime when man wants to revise, wants to understand what is happening around him, definitely he has an answer. This will make you get closer to the environment. This will make you understand what are all the changes, what are all the factors that are playing on a day-to-day basis that is going to change the environment. So going forward, remote sensing is not going to be all about finding out something new or just trying to sense something new that is happening, something strange that is happening in the environment, but that is going to be a recording instrument that's going to take care of millions of bytes of data about the environment. So this is going to be a structural process through which each and every activity of the environment is going to be monitored, it's going to be calculated, it's going to be evaluated in the long run. Followed by, the remote sensing can collect the data much faster than the ground-based observation, covering the large spatial at one time to give a comprehensive view. Simply fantastic. It's getting even more amazing right now. Why? Because let's try to understand this factor clearly. If you are able to calculate just for a while, let's say that you are able to calculate 25 digits into 25 digits. Now that's fantastic. Just start doing that max calculation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 25 digits. Again, multiply it with another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 25 digits. And you are able to give me the answer in a split second. Now, you are no less than a genius. You are a born genius altogether. Similarly, the remote sensing is a genius end of technology. You are able to get trillions and trillions of bytes of data in just few seconds altogether. It is able to collect data worth of billions just like that and start giving you a comprehensive view of what is happening around. So this is the technology that is going to make man even more enthusiastic to know about the environment. Sitting in one place, I want to know what is the situation that's going on in the Indian Ocean. I want to know what has been changing the wave current pattern in the Arabic Ocean. Or I want to see in terms of what is happening in the Pacific. Or I want to understand what are the climatic changes that could probably happen in the Himalayas. What I'm trying to do here is that I want to know each and every detail that's happening in the environment, and I want to know it in the most comprehensive manner as far as possible. So that is where the remote sensing is going to come into picture. That's where I'm going to make myself sure that I'm not going to be left back. I'm going to be in the forefront, and I'm going to learn myself interconnecting the technology to the environment. So this is going to be a rapid success. This is going to be a phenomenal success in terms of learning science and nature put together. Now, the other thing that we want to talk about is that it has the capability of capturing images of distant targets in all weather conditions. Now look at that. You have the capacity of becoming an eagle. An eagle is supposed to be the king of birds, flying at almost 20,000 feet above the ground. Yes, they can go up to that height, or even probably 10,000 feet above the ground. An eagle is still able to look at the image of its prey being at 5,000 or 6,000 or even 10,000 feet above the ground. That's the power of being an eagle. That's why they say you got to have an eagle's eye. Similarly, the remote sensing technology has got the eye 10 times that of an eagle. Being in one place, it can capture the image of probably every single structure, every single place, every single spatial data that's available on this earth. So imagine the power of remote sensing. You are going beyond the horizon to explain, to tell the world that yes, I know what is happening in your country. So remote sensing is not just a technology that I would like to conclude, but it is going to be a tool that is going to take you forward, that's going to make you understand that, every single thing that's happening around the environment has got some value, has got some importance. So every time the capability of capturing the images, bringing it live before your eyes, making you get that visual appearance, the feel, the awareness factor, everything is going to be made possible by using the remote sensing technology. So that's where we are going to go forward in terms of using this wonderful technology. Moving forward, let's try to talk about the application of the remote sensing. Now, that is used as a satellite imagery and for aerial photograph. I think most of you would have seen the movie called as Geostorm, which tried to go forward in terms of explaining the impact of climatic changes that could happen on Earth and how the companies across the globe have invested millions of dollars in terms of controlling the climatic changes. So they had bought in satellites, they had bought in several remote sensing technology to understand the different climatic patterns, and that's where the usage of remote sensing is coming in. So if you look here, let's try to understand the terrain properties or such as vegetation, water, geology, all the kind of multiple purposes that are needed for the human being is being absolutely told here. Is being absolutely looked into it. So using a remote sensing technology, and you will be able to capture the satellite images of all the geographical areas across the globe, able to explain yourself what has been happening in this great universe. Followed by helping to locate the area of natural disaster, monitor its growing proportions, providing information on disaster rapidly, and thereby ensuring the factor to the extent of damage is evaluated precisely. And that's a very wonderful factor that you have got to understand in remote sensing. Why? Because the two parts of a management, especially on disaster management, is that one side you need to evaluate the risk, the other side you need to bring a solution to that risk factor. The evaluation and assessment of a risk is very, very important when it comes to disaster management. Each one of us know what can be the impact of an earthquake, a volcano, a cyclone, a typhoon, a tsunami. But we have never evaluated, we have never assessed the impact in terms of numbers, impact in terms of human life. Why? Because that requires a greater amount of thinking, that requires a greater amount of visualization. Now, by using the remote sensing technology, what we are trying to understand is that we get one step closer to the nature. We get one step closer to that disaster management where we are able to understand, where we are able to penetrate ourselves into the factor that yes, this is what is going to happen. This is what is going to change the life. This is what is going to be the massive disaster that could happen to that particular place. So we will be able to predict, understand, analyze, and also bring in a solution there. That is where it becomes really interesting. So when you know that this is the amount of impact, this is the amount of disaster that could have been caused altogether in that particular location, in that particular scenario altogether, then automatically you know what solution could be bought in next time. So this is where the remote sensing is becoming a very, very important application in our day-to-day life. Followed by monitoring the disaster event, which provides a quantitative base for the relief operations. Now, nobody wants to do max when you are in neck deep in water. But then that's what people need to do when they have to be in neck deep in water. Why is that factor coming into picture now? If you start understanding the concept of swimming, it is not about going in depth. It is all about staying afloat in spite of the depth that's all there. So similarly, in disaster management, you need to know how to keep your head strong and stable in case of emergency, in case of exigencies approaching towards you. So similarly, to do that, you need a quantitative technique. You need a formula. You need a system. You need an analysis pattern that would be able to tell you how to keep yourself afloat in spite of emergencies, in spite of exigencies approaching towards you. So that's exactly where the remote sensing comes into picture. It does a quantitative analysis and provides data to such an extent that every single relief operation, starting from the National Disaster Relief Force, would be very, very grateful enough in terms of understanding and in terms of taking the patterns forward. So that is what they would expect in terms of building up the entire base, because this is able to give them the quantitative picture, the picture in terms of numbers, exactly what would be the impact, where it would impact, and if it's going to impact, what would be the damage, and how we are going to provide a relief for that. So all these factors are going to be calculated using the remote sensing technology. Moving forward, we are now going to talk about even more an information factor called as the geographical information systems. Let's talk about this. Why? Because this is a very, very interesting topic which is now upcoming in terms of the information technology. As I say the word geographical information system, this is all about understanding, storing, retrieving, and mapping, monitoring, modeling, and probably, analyzing all the data types related to geography and nature phenomena. Now, the one most fascinating channel which was always interesting for me was the National Geographic channel. Why? Because when you go through that channel, you would be able to see that the way they have been able to understand and analyze the geographical data of each and every place. That includes the nature, that includes the climate, that includes the environment, people, animals, the living conditions, and so many factors. So it becomes a visual treat to our eyes. And that is possible. Why? Because when you go in for this kind of a technology called as the geographical information system, so you are now trying to get inside, you are now trying to understand and analyze that pattern altogether. You will be able to see that the geographical data is actually helping you to analyze, remodel, bring in all sort of source and visual effect together, which is making the solution even more attractive, which is making you to get all the patterns in hand even before you could visualize. So that's why I say geographical information systems could create a wonder for disaster management. Why? Because you will come to know beforehand what is the kind of problem that is going on and how we need to take it so that we can evaluate the patterns altogether. Moving forward, when you use the geographical information systems, you will be able to understand a drought pattern, an earthquake pattern that has been happening, floods, and the landslide, all these kind of things. When you look here, these pictures really sadden our heart. They really put us on a depressive mode altogether. But then nature has its own call. We cannot go against the nature. We cannot stop the nature. But what we can do is that we can avoid these kind of situations in the next time. We could probably use all our technologies, combine all our powers, and try to stop this kind of thing. We can bring in an effective solution altogether by using technology. The next one, which I would like to talk upon, is called as the global positioning system, quite well known to us because that is exactly what we have been using in our mobile phones. That is what we have been using with our Google images, or when we talk about the Google Maps altogether. So when you go into this system, it is all about the prior knowledge of precise location, landmarks, streets, building, service resources, etc. Now, just for a moment, who would have ever imagined in the world that by speaking to your phone, by just giving your address to your mobile phone through an app called as Google Map, that would precisely drive you to that location? Now, it has gone to that extent that you don't have to ask anybody about how to reach a particular destination. All you need to do is that just you have the Google Map and say the location to it, it automatically takes you to that location. And it even tells you what exactly are the landmark, how much kilometers to drive or how much meters you need to take a left or right, and what are the signal positions and every factor. Now, what is happening here is that technology is just attracting the human towards itself. It's just absorbing our lives in such a manner that we are completely getting dependent on it. We cannot live an independent life out of technology. We cannot go back to Stone Age and say for a while that, yes, I don't need technology. I don't want the systems anymore. Rather, we have become so dependent that each and every data, each and every moment of our body, of our system, or wherever we are living is getting embedded in terms of technology. So that's why I would say that the global positioning system is one of the most important factors, one of the most important technology that was ever invented in the mankind. Why? Because if you start looking at this technology, it is not only going to serve as a facilitating technology, addressing the needs of the people or users at any point, but it's also going to tell you precisely the dimensional coordinates. It's going to be a guide where you will be able to identify, allocate the resources as per the need. So now you have a tool, you have an instrument, you have a gadget with yourself that can go forward and look into the coordinates and exactly tell you what is the help that is needed there. So this is where technology that is an appropriate technology which is being used in terms of helping and preventing the disaster management. So by using all the solutions in future, definitely we will be able to reduce the risk of the disaster and make this world a healthier place, a lively place to live in. With this, I come to the conclusion of this session. I hope and believe that the information that has been shared through this session is of a great help and resource to you. In the next sessions, we would be talking about some more developments that have been happening around in disaster management. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me on this wonderful day.